Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Cash Flow Positive. I'm your host, Kenny Bedwell, uh, founder and CEO of FCR Insights as well. I am excited that you guys are back for another episode. But I wanted to talk about, I'm going to hit some of these first couple of episodes are going to be topics that are near and dear to my heart, the things that I'm most passionate about. Hope you feel that as I dive into these topics. Remember, these part one episodes, they're only 15 minutes. So I'm going to jump right into it and help you guys. And today we're talking about finding cash flowing deals in 45 days because this is really, really challenging. I have heard numerous people say that finding deals is nowhere like it was a few years ago. You could like in 2021, 2022, or maybe not 2022, but like 2021, 2020, you could offer 100K over asking and still have a deal that cash flows and makes money. I mean, it was kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. It was really, really easy. People didn't miss. Now, as times have changed, the market has corrected and has shifted. It has gotten a lot harder. And it's actually become a skill that you have to tune and you have to do it in the correct way or you typically don't find anything. And I hear a lot of people say, I'm suffering from analysis paralysis, or things aren't penciling out, or it just nothing seems to be making money today, or whatever it is. And the reality is that is true, but it's how you're looking and what have you been looking for. And so when we apply a successful methodology, which I'm going to give you guys today, my 5 steps to finding deals in 45 days or less, uh, this is how you find deals. This is how you make it work. And this is how you find that opportunity, that needle in the haystack in the most efficient way. That's the most important thing I want to teach you guys. And what I want you to walk away with is how do I find a deal? But more importantly, how do I be more efficient with my time instead of spinning my wheels looking at nothing uh, or looking at too much? Because our bandwidth is limited. And that's why we're doing this is to minimize how much time we have to spend on work, right? We want that freedom and that flexibility. And so this is my roadmap, my strategy to finding deals in 45 days or less. So let's dive into it. Remember, I am going to be screen sharing something that will be on the YouTube channel, the SDR Insights YouTube channel, by the way. And it's just my roadmap. I'll go through it for podcast listeners. You're not missing really anything else, just a cool little graphic that I didn't make, but it's there to help visualize what I'm talking about. So let's do it. Okay. So each one of these steps, these are 5 steps. So the first one is understanding your ROI goals and preferences. Okay, this is so important. I'm going to dive into this one in great detail. We kind of talked about that in the first episode with what are my cash flow goals and why does that dictate where I should invest? The number two is number two, targeting the right markets. Where should I invest based on my goals? The fact of the matter is you can't actually look for deals until you understand the right markets. And you don't know the right markets unless you know your goals and your preferences and your budget, right? I mean, it kind of sounds, pretty intuitive. But believe it or not, people do this all backwards. And this is why they're not finding deals. Or maybe you're experiencing this yourself. Hopefully you have that aha moment while listening to this episode. Number three, finding the sweet spots. Okay, I'm going to talk about different types of sweet spots and what that really means, but basically, identify the opportunities of things that are working in the market and what's not working. One of and this is going to sound obvious, but people just like it doesn't register in their brains for some reason. Housing prices in every market, even a lot of vacation markets, do not reflect or correlate to the revenue of properties, meaning that people cannot price their homes in most markets based on the revenue of the property. I see people try it all the time, and what happens when they go under contract? Their home doesn't appraise because the appraiser doesn't really care about the revenue of the asset, the short-term rental, because it's being appraised as a residential home. Because short-term rentals aren't legitimately a commercial asset yet. It's not recognized by the big banks as a commercial asset. Therefore, they're being appraised as residential homes. Really cool fun fact, you can get commercial loans for short-term rentals. We call those DSCR, debt service coverage ratio loans, or even portfolio loans too. So you don't have to do just second home loans. Just a little fun fact, a little nugget I'll sneak in there for you. But still, the big banks are not recognizing short-term rentals as these cash flowing assets. Therefore, they get appraised as residential real estate, which can be advantageous for you when finding deals, meaning that the price of homes doesn't necessarily get impacted by the revenue potential of that property. Okay. So we want to find those opportunities and look for those gaps or sweet spots, is what I like to call them in the market. All right. Fourth one, correct property evaluation. I'll probably do a number of episodes on this because this is a very heavy topic, but I'm going to say a bold statement right now. 90% of you that own current short-term rentals evaluated your property wrong, and you got lucky if you're making money on it. So I know it's a bold statement, but the reality is there is a correct way to do property evaluation, and it's not what's been preached and taught for the last 2 or 3 years because things have changed. So keep that in mind as we go through this. The fifth and the most important one, I think, at the end of the day, is crafting a good offer. So depending on when you listen to this episode and depending on what's going in the market, could be a lot of factors. So at the time of filming this, interest rates are starting to come down a little bit, but they're still pretty high. And there isn't a whole lot of competition for a lot of properties out there. So there aren't multiple offers going out. So buyers can craft very attractive offers for themselves and for the seller that makes sense for both parties. A lot of people getting into short-term rentals for the first time think they have to go in and offer at asking. When in reality, like, we can make things work, meaning we can get seller concessions or seller credits, or we can get things. You can even get furniture credits or your closing costs covered or other types of things that might be more appealing to the seller to provide rather than just saying, yeah, I'll knock off $25,000 off the asking price. You can obviously do that as well. But there's multiple ways to kind of sweeten the pie or sweeten the deal for the buyers to make the deal better. Okay. And you need to do that anyway. I mean, that's part of the whole process. And so speaking to your agent about this and going, hey, I think I want a little bit more here. What can I do beyond just saying, oh yeah, let's slash the price? Because a lot of sellers might get offended by that. And a lot of people feel like that too. So there's other ways to kind of make it look prettier, even though we're still getting a good deal and maybe even a better deal by crafting the right offer. So those are the 5 steps: ROI goals and preferences, targeting the right markets, in my hand here, finding the sweet spots, correct property evaluation, and crafting the right offer. So let's kind of dive into each of these pieces briefly. And honestly, each of these deserve their own episode and will probably get their own episode. But I want to put this one out here first because this methodology, these 5 steps in this order, is how I find deals today. And the sooner that I can get this to you, the faster you can start finding deals. And that's my goal. That's my ultimate passion and vision, is to help people find deals faster. And so that's why I'm kind of rushing this, to be like, hey, get this. And I'm only doing it 15 minutes, but each one will get their own segment down the road. And so you can better understand how to maximize each one. Okay, so ROI goals and preferences. We did talk about determining your cash flow goals, but there's really 3 things. When I talk about ROI goals and preferences, there's one that it's not mentioned here, but it's part of it. I call it the big 3. So understand your budget, okay? Before you can actually go and look for properties, you need to know what you can afford, all right? There are 5 things that go into every single STR investment. I want you to write these down. Your down payment, okay? So basically what you're going to pay for if you're financing, which most of us are. Your closing costs, usually about 3% of the loan. Your any renovations or updates. So even if it's light, like paint or kitchen countertops or even a gut job, like that needs to be budgeted in. Your furnishings, design decor and furnishings, and then amenities. Here's something that I learned the hard way on one of my purchases. Properties that come quote unquote turnkey, meaning they're ready to go, they're ready to be rented out day one. They're never ready to be rented out day one. There's always something that needs to be fixed, replaced, or redone, especially the furniture. You need to come into these properties and add your own flavor. Even properties that are cash flowing, making a ton of money, go in and make them better. Okay. Now, you don't need to spend months and months and months, which people make that mistake doing, but you need to go in and make them better. But you need to know what your budget is from the very beginning. So your budget consists of those 5 things. And be prepared and like I said, I'm probably going to do an episode on this because I have like a formula and all these little hacks for that too. But understand your budget and what you can afford, and know that you have to buy furnishings, and you probably have to add amenities and all these other things to the property to make it ready to go. Okay, budget. Next one of the big three, ROI goals. We talked about that in the last episode, to know what your cash flow and your cash on cash goals are. Okay. These will help you and guide you for the next step, which is targeting the right markets. The third and final one of the big three is understanding your personal preferences. So, like, do you want to be in markets that are seasonal? Most markets are seasonal. Okay. Is that okay with you? What about proximity? I have a good friend who calls it two camels and a mule. She doesn't want to have to take 2 flights and drive 5 hours to get to a property. She only wants it to be a direct flight away, or only a 4 hour drive. But everybody has their preferences on where and what and why, even the destination time. This helps us eliminate all the potential markets that don't make sense. Okay. So identify your personal preferences before you start looking for properties and markets. So now that you've done those three things, you're ready to graduate to finding the right markets. Okay. Finding the right markets is based on like 5 things. Determining your budget. So making sure you can afford to be in that market, understand what you can afford in that market, how many properties are currently in that market. And I don't mean that from a saturation standpoint. I actually mean that from a resource standpoint, meaning that if there aren't a lot of cleaners and handyman and maintenance people and other people in that market, there's only like 3 properties. How hard is it going to be to find those? Okay. Really, really painful. So don't go into markets that don't have, or sorry, do not go into markets that have less than 100 active listings unless they're part of a general region, meaning that there's other markets around them that have a lot of properties. So, for example, I think of North Carolina, Fletcher, North Carolina, which is south of Asheville, like 20 minutes south of Asheville, has like 80 properties. Okay, well, Asheville's right there and it has thousands of properties. So is Fletcher too small? No, it's not. So, but whereas like in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, that's a different story. The final piece of this and determining the right markets is, once you know what you can afford in a market, you need to identify properties that are generating the revenue of what you can afford in that market. So if my goal is to make $100,000, in terms of like gross revenue for a property, okay, and I'm looking at a market and I can only afford 2 bedrooms, and there are no 2 bedrooms making $100,000, is that an investable market for me? No, it's not. The fifth and final point with identifying the right markets is regulation. What's the regulation in the market? Can you legally STR there? If you can't, it's not an investable market. Sweet spots. Let's talk about that. Third point. So sweet spots are opportunities where within the market you can invest. It could be a certain bedroom count performs better than others. It could be certain neighborhoods or certain locations. It could be particular amenities like pools or hot tubs or big time amenities, like even like big backyards or properties with views or properties with decks make more than others. But find the sweet spots in the market, and those will help guide you to the best deals. Fourth, correct property evaluation. Once again, I'm going to do a whole episode on this, probably a couple episodes to be honest, because this is a heavy topic. But correct property evaluation starts from the beginning, especially with the sweet spots. Identify the properties that are comparable in nature and look at their rents. And you need to evaluate on a range. Okay. There is not a single property that, if you could tell Kenny, how much is this property going to make? It's like throwing a dart at the wall to try to be precise. The reality is it won't. So if I said $100,000, the probability of it actually making $100,000, even though I'm really good at property evaluation, is very slim to none. It's either going to make above it or below it. So you need to, if that's the case, then you need to evaluate on a range. So correct property evaluation not only starts with understanding the right comparable properties to look at, but evaluating properties on a revenue range, on a good, better, best case scenario, and then using that to calculate your returns. Okay. Fifth and final, we kind of talked about this one already a lot, is crafting the right offer. So if a property might not work out, but if you can craft a better offer to have it work out, a lot of times that's where the deal sits. It doesn't necessarily sit at face value, meaning this $500,000 property, it's a deal. Go for it today at $500K. It might make sense at 450, or it might make sense with just having less cash into the deal for you. Depends on your goals, depends on your preferences, and depends on the other aspects too, the market, sweet spots, and the evaluation. But craft that right offer, and that's where you can kind of put the cherry on top of a really sweet deal. Guys, this is my strategy, my 5-step strategy to finding, or my roadmap, I call it, to finding a deal in 45 days or less. I do it all the time for my clients, and we'll have some people on I'm gonna have a client on. We found a property in in like 3 weeks. It's our first one, and we're gonna hear her story and how she did it, applying these 5 steps. My name is Kenny Bedwell, host of the Cash Flow Positive Show. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Be sure to tune in for the part 2, where we listen to someone who actually applied these steps and how they did it, because that's the important part. And good luck out there, and I'll see you on the next episode.